Okay, I made a list of things I need to do in order to get this car running and driving again, and I also put them in order of priority just so I'm organized. Starting this one off with replacing the reverse light wire harness, and I just picked up these wire set from Harbor Freight today, so that's going to be real useful. I should be able to just replace these spade connectors with the generic ones from Harbor Freight, so that shouldn't be a problem. I have a bunch of heat shrink tubing here with my heat gun. I do want to keep these because these are the original Volkswagen parts. I have all of these cables cut to length, and I really wish this kit came with a black wire, but all they had was brown. So what I ended up using was the 12 gauge and the 14 gauge. Reverse light harness is all done here, and I'm still using that original clip. That's all the old crusty stuff, so that's just going straight into the trash. But before I install that into the Squareback, I think I need to actually remove the harness that I just put in yesterday, but not completely. So I went to Harbor Freight and I finally picked up the Grommet set, and I want to replace, I think there's 6 that needs to get replaced. So I need to fish this out to replace that one. There's one inside here. I don't know if there was originally a grommet that goes here for the starter motor, but I'm gonna put one there anyways. This is a 4th one here on the driver's side, 5, and that's the 6th one there. And that's gonna be as far up the harness I'm gonna go with replacing the grommets. Then I'm gonna reinstall everything back up again. This grommet actually looks pretty different. It looks like it's much thicker than the other ones. These ones here are just like the traditional skinny ones. So I think I'm just gonna replace the first 5. And then the 6th one here, I'm just gonna shove this back in and kind of sweep it under the rug. The harness is now reinstalled back into the Squareback with the new grommets, and I also have the reverse light harness routed through the same channel in the engine bay. All along here, you can see that I am using the same little boot thing for the reverse light. Maybe I can find a new one of these, but I think right now this should be enough to keep the dust and the water out. What I need to do is find a spot where I can put these gauges. I think most people put their gauges around here, but I have my original radio, so I think I'm gonna put it around here. I'm gonna do some light custom fab work here, but basically this aluminum bracket here is meant for, I think, hanging up picture frames, but I cut a piece of this off of the longer one and I drilled a couple holes because those holes line up directly onto the bolts holding, or actually screws holding onto this fuse box. So I'm gonna take those out and basically just mount this right there, and that should give me a surface to mount a few other things onto this bracket. This is the bracket that I've come up with so far. I wish I had my riveting tool, but I don't, so I'm just using some hardware like some screws and some nut here, but basically this just bolts up right there, and I still just have to do some trimming around here. This is pretty much how the bracket looks like. I have everything all cut up and deburred. I'm not gonna worry about painting it or making it look nice. I just really needed something for me to mount my gauges so that I can wire my harnesses and everything. The bracket and the gauges are now installed, and honestly, I'm really liking the position. is just out of the way so that while I'm driving and if I don't want to look at it, I don't really have to. And when I want to, I can just lean forward and look down. So this is obviously not a permanent solution. If I was to make this bracket again, there would be a few changes that I would make. Like I would have left more material here so that that's not so loose. 2, I would have used a different material aside from aluminum, or at least use a thicker kind of bracket. In the next version, maybe I could consider moving this tachometer down to here as well. I'm not really too concerned about that. My main concern was getting these in the position where they're gonna be. That way I can start to measure out the length of these cables when I install the harnessing for the engine. And when I put those in, I'm actually gonna go through the passenger side. So it's gonna go under the dash, then down here, under the door, down to the back, under the rear seat, and into the rear engine. The wiring harness for those gauges are kind of started, but I think I'm gonna hold off for now because for the sake of time, I really wanna install this engine already. So I'm gonna just push forward with everything else and deal with this wiring later. I'm here under the Squareback and now I can start the messier jobs. I'm gonna use this yellow Teflon tape and I'm gonna install it on both drain plugs here. With the Teflon installed onto the drain plugs, I should be good to start filling up the transmission with some transmission fluid. I think I'm supposed to use SAE 90, but I couldn't find any, so the closest one I got was 80-90. I hope that'll be okay, but I'm gonna be using this pump here, and the fill plug is right there on the driver's side of the transmission. I think I'm supposed to use like 2.5 quarts, but really I just have to stop once I see some dripping coming out of the fill hole. The transmission's fully topped off and we should be good to go. Now the next thing on my list is to work on the brakes. But before I work on the brake fluid, I do need to adjust the brake shoes inside the drums. To be honest, I didn't even bother using this Harbor Freight kit. All I really needed was this bottle and this hose, and that should still allow me to do the brakes by myself. With that now out of the way, I can finally work on this engine again. And what I wanted to do was remove these carburetors again so I could clean them. It's so low priority right now that I don't even want to deal with that today. Now I'm going to remove the spare transmission off my engine and I'm going to transfer over the starter motor into my own transmission. Okay, looks like I'm running out of daylight here, but I have my trusty spotlight. I'm ready to install this engine, so I'm gonna put that in real quick and I'll be right back. Wow, dude, look how late it is. It's already pitch black, and it took me that long to put this engine in. And for some reason, it was really hard for me to get this engine connected to the transmission. I thought that maybe the input shaft was having a hard time getting into the clutch and flywheel, and I just wiggled it just non-stop for like an hour and a half, close to 2 hours, and finally it's in. Well, bad news guys. Looks like I'm gonna have to stop for tonight. Take a look at my ignition. Completely blew a hole through it. I have no idea what happened. I tried to crank it to start and it was just spinning. I came back here just to check my wiring. Everything looked okay. I came here and it was a lot of smoke coming out of the distributors. So yeah, my ignition is toast. So I'm gonna take a pause for tonight and maybe come back when I have a replacement ignition. Hey dudes, so a new day has come and I've figured out what's wrong with my engine. This is my second Pertronix ignition in this engine. The reason why I blew up the first one was because I mistakenly put the cables on the wrong side of the terminal. This time around, I was really focused on making sure that didn't happen, and I even wrote down the positive and the negative side on the coil so I don't forget that. The problem this time around was the other two cables that came from the car, and I completely messed that up. The one here on the top's not really a big problem. That is the one that goes to my reverse light harness, so just get that out of the way. The second one though is my biggest problem. This is the one that comes straight from the fuse block, And I even labeled this to the coil pack number 15 negative, and that's exactly where I messed up. On the wiring diagram here, I was following this black line here, 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 and it goes to the coil pack. I even labeled it 15, and I guess I assumed it was going to be negative because this is black. I guess I definitely shouldn't have assumed that, because black usually means ground, but in this case black should have gone to the positive side. Basically, I learned that everything should all go to the positive side, and only the either condenser or electronic ignition goes to the negative. So that should be only one cable to the negative and everything else on positive. Now in terms of those numbers, here obviously it says 15 for positive and 1 for negative. I don't know why I labeled this 15 coil pack negative when it definitely should have been 15 coil pack positive. That's exactly where my problem is. So I'm gonna move this over. I think for now, at least I still have my original points and condenser. So I'm gonna toss that back in, fix that whole situation, and then I should be able to get this running in no time. I cannot for the life of me find the original points and condenser that I pulled out of this distributor. So what I ended up finding was this tin that originally came with the car when I first bought it. And I'm pretty sure, well, this condenser here definitely looks like it's been used. But this points here looks brand new to me. And even on the insides here, they look pretty good. So I think I'm gonna put this in, and hopefully this one should work. And hopefully I can get some spark out of this. With the distributor taken apart, you can really see the carnage on the ignition. And that's not exactly a hole, but it looks like something just burnt inside of it and just started smoking. But yeah, I'm gonna put this in. I have my feeler gauge here. I think the gap is supposed to be set to 16 thousandths of an inch. So I'm gonna do that real quick and then retime the engine. I actually like to preset the gap on here before I even install the distributor. It just makes for a much easier job when I'm actually doing it on the engine. Distributor is installed with the point set to the correct gap. I have it connected to the correct terminals, hopefully. So I'm gonna try and crank it. Let me put some starter fluid first. All right, let's see if she starts. It started right up, so the points and condenser did work. We have spark, everything seemed like it was okay, except the exhaust. I forgot I took off the exhaust because it wasn't gonna fit into the bay while installing it, but now it's in. I should be good to put the exhaust back in. Here I am working another late night, guys, but everything else got bolted up pretty quickly here. I didn't even really record anything. So the fenders are back on, and I have not put on the new bead. This is the set that I have, and it looks like I have to do a bunch of cutting, so I just don't want to deal with that right now. So that's going on next time. I didn't even put on all the hardware for the fenders. I probably put like, let's see, I put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I think there's like 5 more that I didn't use. So I'll put on the rest of the hardware when I'm gonna be putting on the new bead. Also, while I had this fender out, I was actually able to hammer out this big dent here, so now I can actually finally put on my reflector. And the other thing I put on are these Euro lights. These lights I got from the same guy that I got the visor from, as well as my exhaust. So thank you for that. This is gonna be the moment of truth. So I have the rear finally touching the ground, and honestly, this is like the first time it's touched the ground in like, I don't know, half a year. It's been a long time. But the engine is pretty much set. This boot here, I actually took this off and I have no idea where I put it. So right now I just have it plugged with a towel. But I have the points and condenser installed onto the ignition. I kind of cycled through the transmission on all the gears and it seemed like the wheels were spinning, so we'll see if it actually drives. I have the bumper reinstalled with all new hardware because the other ones were starting to get kind of rusty. The rear wheels are looking real nice. I think it's only because the fronts are still lifted and the rear just looks really tucked, but I don't know, I'm kind of digging it. Yeah, don't worry about the harness there. I'll take care of that next time. But safety first. Go guys, I'm driving. The Squareback seems to be running as expected. Woo-wee! Look at that power, baby! Whoa, whoa, there's a dip. Slow down guys, I'm going too fast. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Here we go guys, so I drove it around the block a few times and it feels really good, to be honest. It feels way more powerful than the setup that I had before. I'm feeling a lot more confident driving this thing around, so right now I'm just gonna take it back home. I'm not really gonna do any more driving right now, but I just really wanted to make sure this is actually drivable. And now that I know it is, it's going back under the knife. I think I'm gonna rebuild the whole brake system in the front. In the rear, I've already taken care of that, so that's already done, but the front I have not touched yet. I have all the parts ready for it, but just waiting to get it installed. And now I'm ready to do that. So I'm gonna do that on the next video, and this is gonna be the end of this video. So thanks a lot for tuning in, guys.